Here with me now to talk about markets, Eric Osterhaus, Paragon Ag Advisors. Did you have a good Thanksgiving, Eric?
I did, as always. Ate too much and now just recovering, but I got 30 days here before Christmas, so and then I'll eat again.
There you go. Well, you know what? We need to thank farmers and ranchers and poultry producers all over the country for the bountiful harvest that they have every year. Even though we have struggles, they always provide well for us. You know, the Thanksgiving meal this year, really the price didn't change much. That really goes to show just how well or how good of producers we are here in the United States. But man, all you got to do is look at some of this carryout, and that also shows. I want to talk about, I'm going to start over here in the grains first. Now that we've got, yesterday, Friday, was first notice day, and it was also the last day of the trading month of November, and it was the last day of the week. So when we go back to work on Monday, December 3rd, I guess it is, or 2nd, whatever, we're going to have a brand new clean slate to start with. And it seems to me, as I've looked over some of the history over the last several years, December always seems to give us a little bit of a lift. Because so many farmers say, you know what, I'm not selling anything else until I know my tax responsibilities. It just kind of seems like, and it really shows up, it seems like, in basis. So what are your thoughts as we roll the calendar?
Yeah, certainly you do tend to see that seasonal tendency once December rolls around, especially into that second week of December, that everybody kind of buttons down, and their mind are on other things at that point. And the last thing a lot of folks are doing is delivering grain, selling grain, moving grain. And so typically we do see some of the end users, especially those who they themselves want to go home over Christmas break with no problems or worries in front of them for when they get back. So they want to make sure their needs are all met out early into that next year. And so sometimes what you're referencing is we see a little bit of a basis push into December because regardless of what futures price is doing, if folks are shutting down, they need to find some way to entice people to come to the table and deliver grain. So that is a good thing. Sometimes there are some nice opportunities that actually lie there in that middle to ending part of December for the producer who's looking out.
So if a guy can lock in basis at this point and then hold on to that grain physically and then roll over into January, the reason I keep saying this is because earlier in the week we had the harvest progress numbers through the crop condition ratings. And I noticed where 70% of the corn in North Dakota is not harvested yet. Now, I'll admit that that's not as big of a corn state as Iowa or Illinois or Indiana, but still, if you take 70% of one state's corn crop and take it out of the picture, and the reason I say this is because I talked to producers in that area that said, you know what, we may not even get it harvested at all this year, especially now that we're seeing all of these storms roll through. So, you know, all of a sudden, that January WASDE report could look a whole lot different.
Yeah, there's still a lot to be done. And like you mentioned, I know, let's just say North Dakota, South Dakota, not the biggest corn producing states in the U.S., of course, but obviously still a significant portion of the corn. And again, that reflection that we're going to see on that delay first comes back into basis, especially here in the near term. And you'll see that show up there in basis first. And again, the big money, the money flow, the futures flow, let's just call that would be more likely something that maybe you would start seeing some reaction the closer we get to that January WASDE report, because then all those folks holding positions, in particular short positions in the futures, may start to decide that going to the sideline might not be a bad idea, just in case something surprising does come out of those numbers.
Yep. All right, let's switch here. I want to talk about cattle before we run out of time. Hey, back earlier in the week, we broke through that 120 on the live cattle contract. That was impressive. Now it seems, what do we go from here in December? Do you think that from all intents and purposes, demand is being balanced pretty well with supply and we can see this market hold?
Well, it really seems as if the market wants to hold. All the signs seem to be pointing that direction. And I know we've talked over the last several weeks regarding the strength and all those fundamental features that have been out there, and we still continue to see those same things. It will be interesting. You mentioned earlier a little bit about the weather as well. I think that starts to play a bigger part here as we move forward over the next 60 to 90 days. And so especially if we see some of these other fundamentals continue to support that market and we get a little bit of friendly weather in regards to maybe getting a little worried about the movement of that supply as well, that really could perk us through that top end of that range that we've been trading, but that resistance that we've been bumping up against here this last couple of weeks. So it'll be interesting to see, especially with this latest weather that's been rolling through, whether the market starts reacting to that following week.
Yeah, but we've got such light, thin volumes of trade, and we have had even before the holidays. And now that the holidays are here, do you expect this light, thin trade to lead to just choppy sideways, technically driven markets?
Well, it's funny. You know, light trading, little volume out there, it really can surprise you, both good and bad, of course. But I'm just saying that if you're bumping up against resistance and somebody decides in a very light day to add a little size to the market, to the upside, let's just say in this case, it can actually cause the market, you know, you start bumping through some stops in there as well while nobody's at home, so to speak, and then the market really makes a move. Now that can also happen to the downside, but that is the one thing about those thin markets, is it only takes one or two folks with some size to really push it here.
All right, thank you very much, Eric.